They say the desert keeps its secrets buried beneath sand, bone, and blood. But in dust water, secrets don't stay buried. They crawl back to the surface, hungry and unforgiving. I came looking for nothing more than a drink, a warm bed, maybe a game of cards. Instead, I found her eyes the color of storm clouds, lips painted with lies she never spoke. A widow, they whispered, a temptress, a curse in silk. The town called her Clara Blackthorn. Some swore she killed her husband for gold. Others said she lured men to their doom with nothing but a smile. But when she touched my hand that night, I felt something I hadn't in years: danger and desire, dancing together like fire and whiskey. And before the sun rose over dust water, I would learn the truth. In the Wild West, love is never tender. It's a weapon. And Clara Blackthorn wielded it better than any gun. If you love untamed Wild West love stories filled with betrayal, passion, and deadly secrets, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next tale. The sun was melting into the horizon, painting the desert sky in shades of blood and fire. The air shimmered with heat, though the evening wind carried the faint bite of cold. I rode into Hollow Creek with my hat pulled low, dust clinging to my coat like the weight of old sins. The town looked half-dead boards creaking in the wind, lanterns swinging faintly, shadows crawling across abandoned windows. But there was movement. People whispered behind shutters. A dog barked once, then fell silent. It was the kind of town that had seen too much and trusted too little. I dismounted slowly, boots crunching against the brittle earth. Every eye that dared peek at me quickly vanished behind curtains. I could feel their suspicion pressing down, heavy as the desert sky. That's when I saw her. She stepped out of the saloon, lamplight spilling around her like a halo of gold. Her dress clung to her curves, corset laced tight, fabric torn slightly at the edges, as if she'd been fighting the town itself. Black curls framed her face, and her eyes sharp, burning, alive, locked on me, with a force that nearly knocked the breath from my chest. I'd seen dangerous men, dangerous nights, dangerous storms, but I had never seen beauty that felt like a loaded gun aimed straight at my heart. New in town? Her voice carried low and smooth, curling around the silence like smoke. Just passing through, I answered, though my voice betrayed the lie. Men like me didn't pass through. We lingered where trouble brewed, because trouble had a way of finding us. The saloon behind her buzzed with life-drunken laughter, the shuffle of boots, the clink of whiskey glasses. And yet, in that moment, the whole world seemed to narrow to her eyes. I tipped my hat slightly, a gesture of respect, though something about her made me want to kneel or run. Maybe both. She smirked, as if she could read my hesitation. Be careful, stranger. Hollow Creek eats men alive, especially the ones who come looking for something they shouldn't. Her words lingered like poison honey. Sweet, deadly. I pushed past her and stepped into the saloon. Smoke hung thick, whiskey burned the air, and every set of eyes turned on me like wolves scenting fresh blood. Cards slapped against wooden tables, coins clanked, but beneath the noise, I heard it, the hush that always followed a stranger too bold to walk through cursed doors. The barkeep eyed me with disdain, wiping a glass with a rag dirtier than the glass itself. What'll it be? Whiskey. Neat. He poured it slow, eyes never leaving mine, as if searching for a crack in my armor. I tossed back the drink in one motion. The burn felt like an old friend, crawling fire down my throat. From the corner of my eye, I caught her again, the woman from the doorway. She'd followed me inside, hips swaying like a rhythm, only the damned could dance to. She didn't sit. She didn't speak. She only watched every move I made, every breath I took. And in that silence, I realized something bone deep and undeniable. This wasn't just a woman. This was the reason I had been drawn to Hollow Creek. This was the storm I hadn't yet weathered. The saloon swallowed me whole, smoke curling to the ceiling. Lanterns hissing with every flicker. Piano keys stumbling through a broken tune. The crowd barely moved, yet I could feel the shift in air. The way whispers slithered between tables. Strangers in towns like this weren't just visitors. We were suspects, burdens, or prey. I walked slow, letting the floorboards creak under each step. I wanted them to hear me coming, to know I wasn't the type to hide. Men hunched over their cards, looked up briefly, eyes narrowing, then dropped them back to their hands. A few women in feathered dresses watched me with mild curiosity. But even their stares were cautious, veiled. The woman from the doorway, the one who had burned me alive with just a glance, sat down at a corner table, shadows clinging to her curves like jealous lovers. She didn't motion me over. Her presence was gravity itself, pulling me in. I ordered another whiskey, slower this time, and carried it across the room. Every step felt like trespassing across enemy land. By the time I reached her, the silence was screaming. "Mind if I sit?" I asked, though my voice carried the weight of inevitability. Her lips curled not into a smile, but something sharper. "If you didn't, I'd be disappointed." I slid into the chair opposite her. The wood groaned under my weight, or maybe under the pressure of her eyes dissecting me. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. She studied me like a hawk studies a rabbit before deciding whether to swoop. "You're not here for whiskey," she said flatly. "No," I admitted. "Whiskey's just the excuse." She leaned back, fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "And what's the truth, stranger?" I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence breathe, let it coil around us, because the truth wasn't something I gave away freely. Not anymore. Instead, I asked, "What's your name?" Her laugh was soft, humorless. "Names in Hollow Creek don't mean much. They're just another way to get buried faster." "I'll take my chances." She studied me for another long beat, then finally spoke. "Clara." The name landed heavy, rolling in my chest like thunder before a storm. I'd heard whispers on the trail, rumors about Hollow Creek's Black Widow, a woman who could charm a man with one look and ruin him with the next. If the stories were true, Clara had loved once, loved hard, and buried every man who thought he could tame her since. Her eyes glittered as though she knew I recognized the name. Still, sitting here, most men would have run by now. Maybe I'm not most men. She smirked, but it wasn't playful. It was a warning, dressed as temptation. That's what they all say. The barkeep called out, slamming a glass down at the counter. Two men laughed too loudly at their card table. The room came alive again, though I felt every sound as a distant echo. For me, the world had narrowed just me, Clara. And the question I couldn't yet answer: was she my salvation, or the bullet with my name on it? She leaned forward, her perfume cutting through the smoke, sharp as steel, sweet as sin. "If you're wise, you'll finish your drink and leave town before the sun rises. And if I'm not wise," her smile was slow, dangerous, "then you'll learn why Hollow Creek eats men alive." I didn't move. I didn't speak. My silence was answer enough. Her eyes softened barely, for just a flicker of a second, and I wondered if the rumors were wrong. Maybe she wasn't a monster. Maybe she was just a woman who'd been carved hollow by loss, forced to sharpen her edges to survive. But then a shout erupted from across the saloon. Chairs scraped. A man staggered toward us, drunk, and mean, his face twisted with jealousy or rage or both. "Clara," he bellowed, pointing a crooked finger. "You don't get to toy with me tonight. Not with him sitting there." The saloon stilled again. Eyes darted between the drunk and me, waiting for sparks to catch fire. Clara didn't flinch. She just sighed, almost bored. "Go home, Marcus, before you embarrass yourself more." Marcus spat on the floor, eyes red, fists clenched. "You think you can keep pushing me aside? You think I won't?" I stood slowly, my chair scraping back like a blade against stone. The room sucked in a collective breath. My hand rested casually near my revolver, though I didn't draw. "Not yet. Walk away," I told him, voice low, steady. "Don't make this worse than it has to be." For a moment, the drunk froze, teetering on the edge of fight or flight. His lip curled, his pride warring with his fear. Finally he spat again, this time at my boots, and stumbled back toward the bar. The saloon exhaled in relief. Laughter bubbled nervously. The piano started again. Clara raised her glass, her gaze locked on mine. "You've just made yourself a part of Hollow Creek's story, stranger. And once you're in the story, there's no walking out." I finished my whiskey, letting the burn settle deep in my chest. And for the first time that night, I wondered if she was right. The night deepened, wrapping Hollow Creek in its quiet, uneasy shroud. Outside, the desert wind howled like a starving wolf. Inside the saloon, smoke thickened until every lantern flickered as though it struggled to breathe. Clara hadn't moved since Marcus slunk back to the bar. Her eyes followed me with the same steady fire, as if she were waiting to see whether I'd crack under the weight of this town's ghosts. "You didn't have to step in," she said finally, her voice smooth, but with a hint of steel beneath. "Yes, I did," I answered. A man raises his hand at a woman. He answers for it. Her smile was faint, almost sad. "Chivalry is sweet, stranger. But in Hollow Creek, it's suicide. Marcus isn't the problem. He's just a shadow of it." I leaned back, chair tilted on two legs. "Then, tell me who the problem island." For the first time, her gaze faltered. It wasn't fear I saw. Clara wasn't the type to fear men. No. What I saw was calculation. The way a gambler studies the table before placing the bet that could win it all or end the game. "You've heard the stories about me," she said, voice quieter now. "I've heard whispers," I admitted. "A woman whose lovers don't live long." Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "That's the tale they tell. That I kill men for sport. That I bury them under the desert stars. And is it true?" She leaned closer, eyes catching the lantern light until they glowed amber, feral. "Number. But the truth is worse." The words settled like a stone in my gut. "Worse how?" She took a long sip of whiskey, her hands steady, even as the room seemed to lean in closer. "Every man who's cared for me, every man who's tried to stay, they all ended up dead. Not by my hand, but because Hollow Creek has a way of swallowing hope and spitting out corpses." I studied her carefully. This wasn't just some tale spun to scare me off. Her voice carried weight, the heavy truth of someone who'd buried dreams with her bare hands. "Then why stay here?" I asked. Her eyes darkened, clouded with something I couldn't yet read. "Because if I leave, Hollow Creek wins. And I can't let that happen. Not after what it took from me." Before I could press her further, the saloon doors banged open. The crowd froze, eyes snapping to the entrance. 3 men strode in, dusty, broad-shouldered, their coats hiding iron and their eyes sharp as knives. Outlaws. The kind of men who made towns like this bleed. The tallest one scanned the room until his gaze landed on Clara. A slow grin spread across his face. Well, well, looks like the widow's found herself new company. The name hit me like a whip. The widow. The stories were real. Or at least the legend was. Clara didn't flinch. You're not welcome here, Dyer. The man Dyer laughed. Deep. And ugly. This whole town's ours, sweetheart. Everything in it. Including you. My hand itched toward my revolver. But Clara placed hers gently on my wrist under the table. A silent command. Not yet. Dyer and his men moved closer, boots thudding against the wooden floor like war drums. The room shrank with every step they took. What do you want? Clara asked, voice steady. Dyer's grin widened. You know what we want. Same thing as always. You. The crowd stayed silent. No one dared move. Hollow Creek had learned to survive by keeping its head down. Clara's grip on my wrist tightened before she let go. You'll have to kill me first. Gladly, Dyer said, hand drifting toward the revolver at his side. I stood in one fluid motion, chair toppling back, my revolver drawn before the crowd could blink. The room crackled with the electricity of a storm about to break. Don't, I growled. Not unless you're ready to meet your maker tonight. Dyer's men froze, eyes darting to him for a cue, for a tense heartbeat. No one moved. Then Dyer chuckled, low and dangerous. You've got fire, stranger. I like that. But fire burns out quick in Hollow Creek. He motioned to his men, and slowly, like wolves slinking back into the dark, they retreated toward the door. Before stepping out, Dyer tipped his hat mockingly to Clara. Enjoy your new pet while he lasts. The doors slammed shut behind them. The saloon exhaled in shaky relief. I holstered my revolver, heartbeat still pounding in my ears. Friends of yours? Clara's smile was bitter. Hollow. Enemies. The kind that never stop coming. Her eyes locked onto mine, blazing with a mixture of defiance and despair. Now do you see, stranger? This is what Hollow Creek Island, a noose tightening around your neck. And you've just stepped right into it. The saloon was slow to find its heartbeat again. Laughter stuttered back into place, though it sounded thin, fragile like glass, ready to break. Men bent their heads lower over cards. Women drifted back into corners, and the piano limped into another tune no one was listening to. But I didn't take my eyes off Clara. She sat there perfectly still, her glass untouched, her gaze lost in some place far away. For a moment, the fire I had seen in her seemed dimmed, as if Dyer's shadow had stolen the air she breathed. You know them well, I said, breaking the silence. Her lips parted, but no sound came at first. Finally, she whispered, too well. I leaned forward. Who is he? Dyer, she said, voice flat. And his men. They've been bleeding this town for years. Hollow Creek belongs to them in every way that matters: land, money, lives. She glanced at the door, as though half expecting it to burst open again. I've crossed them more times than I should have. Crossed them how? Her eyes lifted to mine. Hard and unflinching now. By surviving. By not bowing. By not letting them own me. I respected her steel, but I could see the cost in the lines of her face, the tightness in her shoulders. And the people here? I asked. Why don't they fight back? Clara's laugh was short, bitter. Because fighting back means dying. And this town has buried enough of its sons. Her words carried a weight, heavy with grief, that no whiskey could wash away. I studied her quietly. And you? How many have you buried? She froze. For a long moment I thought she wouldn't answer. But then, her voice broke like glass under pressure. Whoa. Her hands trembled for the first time. fingers clenching the edge of the table. She didn't look at me as she spoke, her eyes fixed somewhere in the smoke. My husband, she said, and my brother, both gone before the dust even settled, both because of Dyer. The room seemed to shrink around us, the laughter and noise blurring into nothing. I stayed, she continued, her voice growing colder, because if I left, their deaths would mean nothing. I stayed because one day, someone has to put an end to him, to them. Her confession was a blade, sharp and raw. I could feel the anger, the grief, the burning vow buried in her words. Why tell me this? I asked carefully. She met my eyes again, and this time her gaze wasn't just fire. It was desperation, threaded with something fragile. Because you drew on him. Because you didn't run. Men who stand their ground in Hollow Creek are rare, and men who survive it. She trailed off, shaking her head as if the thought were too dangerous to finish. I leaned back slowly. I didn't come here looking for a war. No one ever does, she said softly. But Hollow Creek doesn't give you a choice. The weight of her words settled in my chest like lead. I knew she was right. I had seen towns like this before rotting under the boots of men like Dyer. Too scared to fight, too broken to flee. And I knew what it meant to step into their story. The barkeep set down another whiskey in front of me. Unasked, I raised a brow. On the house, he muttered. You'll need it. I drank. The burn, harsh enough to sting. Across the table, Clara finally lifted her glass, taking a slow sip, as though bracing herself for the storm that had already begun. Her voice was low, steady now. Stranger, you need to understand. Dyer doesn't let go. Not of grudges, not of debts. By standing up tonight, you've put yourself in his sights. He won't forget, and he won't forgive. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. Then I guess I'll have to give him a reason to regret it. Clara's eyes widened slightly, not with fear, but with something else. Hope, maybe. Or the dangerous spark of belief. You really don't know what you've stepped into, she whispered. I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. Then tell me, everything. Because if I'm going to hang in this noose, I'd rather know how tight the rope island. For a moment, silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Then, finally, Clara nodded. Meet me after midnight, she said. Behind the church. If you're serious about surviving Hollow Creek, you'll be there. Her words hung in the smoke like a promise or a curse. And as I finished my drink, I realized the truth. I had walked into Hollow Creek looking for nothing more than whiskey and a bed. But what I'd found was a war I couldn't walk away from. The clock struck midnight with a hollow clang that echoed through the dead streets of Hollow Creek. The town was silent, as though holding its breath. Lanterns burned low, shadows stretched long, and the desert wind whispered secrets through the alleys. I walked slow, boots crunching against dirt, hand never far from my revolver. Every step felt like trespass into sacred ground. Every shadow a threat waiting to unfold. The church loomed at the edge of town, its steeple cracked, its cross leaning like a weary soldier. The paint had long since peeled, the windows dark with dust. But tonight, a single lantern glowed faintly behind it. A beacon, a warning, or both. Clara was there, waiting in the half-light. Her black dress seemed to drink the moonlight, her hair loose now, tumbling over her shoulders like a storm let free. She wasn't the sultry woman of the saloon tonight. She looked sharper, harder like a blade honed by grief and rage. You came, she said softly, though her eyes told me she'd never doubted it. I tipped my hat. You asked? I listened. Her lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. Then, listen close, stranger, because what I tell you tonight will decide whether you see another dawn. I stood still, letting the weight of her words settle. She took a breath, steadying herself. Dyer wasn't always a tyrant. Once, he was just another drifter, blowing in with his men, hungry for coin. The town thought they could buy peace with whiskey and silver. But men like him, you feed them once, they never stop eating. Now he owns the mines, the land, the law, everything. Her eyes darkened, shadow swallowing fire. And when my husband stood against him, when my brother tried to fight back, they disappeared. No bodies, no graves, just gone. And the town pretended not to see. I clenched my fists, jaw tight. And you've stayed. Alone. Her gaze didn't waver. Because someone has to remember them. Someone has to keep fighting, even if it's hopeless. I studied her face, the pain carved deep, the steel threaded through sorrow. She wasn't just surviving Hollow Creek. She was defying it. What do you want from me, Clara? I asked. Her answer came fast, without hesitation. Help me kill him. The night seemed to freeze around us. The words lingered in the cold air, sharp and final. I took a step closer, my voice low. That's no small ask. It's not a request, she said, eyes blazing. It's a promise. One way or another, Dyer dies. And if you want to walk away, do it now. Because once you're in, there's no turning back. Her fire was dangerous, intoxicating. But so was the pull. I felt the undeniable truth that Hollow Creek had already tied me to its fate. I exhaled slowly. I've killed men before. Men who deserved it. If Dyer is what you say he is, then I'll stand with you. Her eyes softened for the first time that night. A flicker of gratitude, piercing through the storm. Then you're braver than most. We stood in silence for a moment, the desert wind tugging at our coats, carrying with it the scent of sage and dust. Then she stepped closer, so close, I could see the tremor in her hands. They'll come for us, she whispered. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the night after, but they will come. And when they do, we can't face them alone. We'll need allies, people willing to remember what it means to fight. And where do we find them? I asked. Her lips curved into something between a smile and a challenge. Leave that to me. Just be ready. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. Her eyes caught mine, and for the first time since I'd met her, the fire in them wasn't just defiance. It was something warmer, something dangerous in its own way. I reached out without thinking, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She didn't pull away. Clara, I murmured. Her breath caught, her voice a whisper. Don't make promises you can't keep. Before I could answer, a sound cracked the silence, a gun cocking in the dark. We spun, weapons drawn, the night exploding with tension. A figure stepped from the shadows, lantern light catching the sneer on his face. Marcus, the drunk from the saloon. Well, ain't this sweet? He slurred, though his hand was steady on his revolver. The widow and her new hero plotting in the dark. Dyer'll pay handsomely to know about this. Clara's voice was ice. Marcus, put the gun down, but Marcus only grinned wider, finger tightening on the trigger. Not tonight, darling. Tonight, I finally matter. The wind howled, the desert holding its breath once more. And I knew, in that frozen second, that the first blood of this war was about to be spilled. The moon carved silver lines across Hollow Creek, the town silent except for the rattle of the wind. Marcus stood before us, pistol raised, his drunken swagger tempered by the cold steadiness of a man desperate for worth. "Don't do this," I said. My revolver aimed square at his chest. "You're drunk, Marcus. Walk away, and you'll see the sunrise." He sneered, spit glistening on his lips. "You think I care about sunrises? Dyer never gave me nothing but scraps. But you just gave me gold, a reason to matter. I hand you two over, and I'll finally be more than Hollow Creek's drunk fool." Clara stepped forward, her voice slicing through the dark. "Marcus, please. You're better than this." He barked a laugh, bitter and hollow. "Better? You never looked at me twice, Clara. Always too busy pitying me, or chasing dead men who thought they could save you. But now I've got your attention." His pistol wavered toward her, and that was his mistake. I fired. The blast cracked the night, echoing through the hollow streets. Marcus staggered back, shock flooding his face as the revolver slipped from his fingers. He crumpled to the dirt, a dark bloom spreading across his shirt. The silence that followed was deafening. Clara stood frozen, her breath sharp, her eyes locked on the man bleeding at her feet. I holstered my gun slowly, heart pounding. I'd killed before, but this was different. This wasn't an outlaw or a raider. This was a man hollowed out by despair, too weak to stand against the storm, too desperate to matter. Clara knelt beside him, her hand trembling as she reached for his. Marcus coughed, blood staining his lips. "I just wanted to be seen," he rasped. Her eyes shimmered, but her voice was steady. "You were, Marcus. You were." His body went limp, the last of his breath drifting away with the wind. We sat in silence, the weight of it pressing down like stone. Hollow Creek had claimed another soul. Not by Dyer's hand this time, but by ours. Finally, Clara rose, her face pale but her eyes blazing. "There's no hiding now. Dyer will know. They'll all know." I nodded grimly. "Then let him come." She stepped closer, so near I could feel the tremor of her breath. "You don't understand. Marcus wasn't just some drunk. He was Dyer's eyes and ears. If he doesn't report back by morning, then morning will bring war." Her gaze met mine, fierce and unyielding. "And you're still here? Still willing to stand with me?" I thought of the trail behind me, the graves left unmarked, the endless running from ghosts that never tired. I thought of the fire in her eyes, the vow in her voice, and the truth that had taken root in my chest since the moment I rode into Hollow Creek. "I'm not running," I said, for the first time. She smiled, not the sharp, dangerous smirk of the saloon, but something real, fragile, and alive. "Then maybe," she whispered, "we have a chance." We dragged Marcus's body to the edge of town, burying him shallow under the desert sand. No words were spoken, no prayers offered. Hollow Creek didn't forgive, and the earth had no more room for ceremony. By the time we finished, the horizon was bleeding with the first light of dawn. The wind carried the promise of reckoning, sharp and cold. Clara stood beside me, her hair whipping wild in the wind, her dress stained with dirt and blood. She looked like both a queen and a ghost, ruling over a kingdom of dust and bones. "This is it," she said quietly. "The point of no return." I tightened my grip on the revolver at my side. "Then we don't return." She turned her face toward me, the rising sun catching her features in firelight. For a fleeting moment, amidst death and dust, she was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And in that moment I knew Hollow Creek wasn't just another stop on the trail. It was the place where my story would either end or finally mean something. Thank you for riding through this story with us tonight. If Clara's fight for survival and love in the deadly heart of the West gripped you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who love tales of passion and danger. Every click keeps the fire of these Western romances alive and helps us bring you even more stories from the dusty trails of the old frontier. Until the next ride, may your nights be safe and your heart stay wild.